The one with my mom was better, but no, thank you very much for being here. And I can't thank Family Foundation enough for all the work that they do. The organization has just been great, not just in Richmond, but also now with the work that they're doing on the PAC side and getting out there and actually making a difference with respect to the door knocking and the work they're doing on organizing voters. Clearly, I have to recognize my old seatmate, Brenda Pogge, who is here today, who is just an absolute champion for liberty. It was, when we were there, it was Mike Weber on one side, Brenda, and then it was me, and we called, Brenda was like, our adult supervision, we called her the row mom. She made sure we didn't get into too much trouble. And then obviously it's been a tremendous honor to serve with Delegate Cox and the work that he's done. And when he was speaker, I'll tell you, when that bill came forward with Kathy Tran, talking about taxpayer-funded abortion all the way up to birth, Speaker Cox did something that I don't think any of us had ever seen before or ever heard before. And he actually surrendered the gavel as speaker, came down and gave a floor speech about that because he felt that that issue rose to the gravity that required the Speaker of the House to actually address it directly, and did a fantastic job talking about what all of our concerns are. So I'm going to do something kind of a little bit different. Whenever I'm talking to the Family Foundation, I'm excited because I can get into these worldview conversations, because Family Foundation actually provides worldview training, and I really think that's at the heart of what we're talking about with this election cycle, right? It's not just Republican and Democrat. It's not just a conversation about tax policy or healthcare policy. This really comes down to a major philosophical debate that we're having in the country right now, and it is rooted in the idea, I think, of what is the foundational starting point of your worldview. And the starting point for mine is very simple. It's Christ. And I remember the very first time I was asked to run for office by somebody who I thought was a friend of mine. I said, all right, but you're going to get what you get. Right? And I remember the very first speech I gave to a crowd where we were announcing our candidacy. I said, the first thing that you need to understand about me is that my faith is the foundation of my worldview. I'm a Christian first and foremost. I said, now for those of you who are not Christians, let me explain to you what that means. It means that I believe that every human being has inherent worth, because every human being was beautifully and wonderfully created in the image of God with a purpose to fulfill that is uniquely theirs. It means that I don't get to use the force of government to compel you to believe what I believe. I have to do the things in order to protect for public safety, to protect individual liberty, but the foundation is this. The one entity in the universe, God, that had absolute authority, justification, and ability to create you as a robot or an automaton or to do whatever he wanted, didn't. He created you free, and how dare any human being try to enslave, oppress, or control you. But we're at a point right now, and I've got to say, Tara, I can't thank you and your family enough for the fact that you came forward, because it is one of those things where I think a lot on our side, Republican, and you see this all the time in simple ways and in major ways, where because we don't have a desire to attempt to control our neighbor through the power or coercive power of government, because we are actually the people that believe in peaceful coexistence. We're the people that don't believe in using the threat of violence or coercion or government power to control you. You should be free to live your life provided you don't infringe on the liberties or freedoms of somebody else. Because we believe all of that, we have a natural inclination to say that if we disagree, it doesn't have to be mean-spirited, but I'm going to be over here and I'm going to believe what you believe, and you go over there and you believe what you believe. And more I've seen it, and you see it all the time when you walk downtown, and you'll see Democrat business owners where they proudly display their signs because they're not worried about a group of Republicans coming by and throwing a brick through their window. And the concerns that you had when you said, if we put this out, this is going to have far-ranging consequences, you're absolutely right. But you accepted them. And we need a whole lot more of that in this country. Because if you think the only thing at stake is tax policy or transportation policy, I'm here to tell you, you have fundamentally missed what is going on in this country right now. This debate about worldview defines us as a country and as a people, as individuals. The United States is not just a piece of geography conveniently located between two oceans. Margaret Thatcher probably said it best when she said, Europe was created by history, but America was created by philosophy. To reject the concepts of individual liberty, to reject the idea of objective morality and of an objective moral lawgiver, to reject the idea of truth. To reject these things is to reject the American experiment. And if we lose that, and especially if we lose it because we weren't willing to fight for it, then we may call ourselves Americans going forward, but the term will be meaningless. And I can't have that. And it's not just because I was brought up with an appreciation for what this country is, what it stands for, the principles, the idea of individual liberty, of private property rights, of personal responsibility, the idea that no matter where you start off in life, your life is uniquely yours, and you can choose to see challenges as burdens, or you can choose to see them as opportunities, but in this country you will be free to make the choice. And I'm watching as more and more people, young people, reject it. Not because they've heard a good explanation of it and have chosen a different path, but because all they have been fed is a caricature about who we are and what we believe. We've raised a generation telling them that it's impolite to talk about religion or politics. And then we sent them off to a university where all they talk about is religion and politics, and it certainly isn't from the worldview that we share. We have an obligation to not only fight for this because it affects us personally, we have an obligation to fight for it because of everyone that came before us and of everyone that will come after us. And what I found is that when you stand up boldly and unapologetically and you defend what it is that we believe, it's attractive to people. But if we're going to walk around with our head down acting like, well, I'm a conservative, I'm a Christian, but other than that I'm a good person, don't expect that to convince anyone. And what I've never understood, is that the ideas that are being pushed by left-wing ideology at this point, what is it rooted in? It's rooted in a view of men and women as if you were here nothing by time plus chance plus matter, an accident in an evolutionary process which has no ultimate purpose or meaning. Wow, how motivating. They treat people as they're nothing more than a stomach to be managed by a political elite that thinks they're superior to the rest of us. Why wouldn't they think that if their entire worldview is rooted in the idea of the quest for power or the quest for pleasure with no ultimate meaning? But what do we offer in response to that? If it's to privatize all of our beliefs and to not actually talk about our philosophy, not only should we not be surprised when it's rejected, we deserve the consequences. But standing up, a family saying that I saw something, it was wrong, and I'm not going to remain silent about it. There's a British sociologist named Theodore Dalrymple, greatest English name ever. And he made a statement, I'm going to paraphrase it for you, but I think it was really important. And he said the more that he studied propaganda under the Soviet bloc, the more he recognized that propaganda was not meant to inform. It was meant to intimidate and humiliate. And so therefore, the less it corresponded with reality, the more effective it was. Because if you can convince someone to remain silent in the face of obvious lies, and then later on get them to repeat those lies, you make them a party to evil. He goes, I have since become convinced that political correctness works the same way and for the same reason. So for me, this is very simple. We are either going to stand up for what we believe and actually prove that we believe it. And I don't mean occasionally voting. I don't mean the occasional volunteer work. I mean we're either going to live it out in our lives to where people can see that we mean it, not just because of what we say, but because of what we actually do. But if we're not willing to do this, then may God forgive us and may history forget we ever dared call ourselves Americans. But I don't think that's going to be our fate. And the reason I don't think it is because when people are forced with the decision, when it is put in their face of this is the alternative, you are either going to be harassed, you are either going to be potentially hurt, you're going to have your liberties infringed on, or you're going to stand up regardless of the consequences to say that this is wrong, and we will not refrain from calling it wrong because of threats, coercion, or consequences. And I'll leave you with this. A friend of mine and someone I think is very inspiring, his name's Dave Eubank. He runs the Free Burma Rangers. It's a Christian missionary group that has not only gone into Burma to help with the Karen tribes, which are fighting oppression from the government in Burma. He's also gone over to Syria. In fact, there was an article written where it shows him leaving cover while undergoing intense fire in order to save a small child that was actually surviving under the body of her dead mother in a fire zone. He takes his kids with him to Burma, to Syria. And I asked him once, I said, Dave, you're a former Ranger Regiment, I'm former SF, I get how we do it. He goes, but how do you take your wife and your kids with them? And he said, Nick, we have made a decision that our family will not be motivated by the quest for comfort or the threat of fear. So I would ask you to remember Isaiah when God says, "Whom shall I send?" And decide what your answer is going to be. And let us all pray that we chose the same answer Isaiah did.